Sometimes power is everything, and in solo leveling, the quality of your life might really depend on what level of power you awaken to when you become a hunter. Now, of course, people randomly awaken hunter abilities, but remember that it's only through the process of reawakening that they're able to become powerful enough to change their rank even one space. There are massive differences in the power levels between hunters at every level through E and S, but Jin Woo says there's massive differences in the income as well. When Jin Woo goes in for his reevaluation, we see him sitting next to a man praying that he at least gets C rank because he needs the money to pay off his debts and finally get the chance to live with his daughter, showing just how deep this is for people, as the entire time the man just let person after person go before him since he was too nervous to get through with the actual test. Jin Woo shifts the power balance of his entire country when he decides it's time to finally come out of hiding and take a hunter reevaluation test, where he just has to put his hand on an orb that'll sense his magic power and place him in the appropriate rank. Now, Jin has been through a lot since episode 1, where the device read his power as weaker than the average person. However, this time when he places his hand on the machine, it surges with electricity, making a loud noise as errors pop up on the screen, and the workers there realize they're witnessing history. That this only ever happens when the machine isn't capable of measuring someone's mana, a sign to everyone that Sung Jin Woo is Korea's 10th S rank hunter, while he calmly stands there not understanding how everything is about to change. Finally though, after Jin Woo nearly breaks the machine and becomes S rank, this guy goes through with it, actually getting placed in the C rank and giving us a happy ending to his little story in this chapter. But other people aren't so lucky when they put their hands on the mana reader. This led to a huge commotion in the Hunter Association building, and outside, the ultimate hunter Choi Jong-in realizes that something interesting has to be going on as he makes his way towards the building. Inside, Jin Woo was told that he needs to come back in 3 days because they need permission to use a more advanced mana reader since his is unmeasurable by their current device. All the hunters in the room think this must be a fluke, as some even try to get reevaluated themselves, thinking the machine will make them S rank as well. However, others in the room want to recruit Jin Woo into their guild, though stuff like that costs a lot of money, especially if he is an S ranker. Now, while these people realize they're witnessing history, things only get more chaotic as the ultimate hunter makes his way into the building and walks right towards our main character, wanting to know everything about what's happening here. Jin tries to keep to himself, but the ultimate hunter takes one look at him and thinks there's no need to wait 3 days for his results. He can literally see that Sung Jin Woo is one of the strongest S rank hunters out of the rest of them. This gets his interest, as Choi himself is no pushover, being the best user of fire magic in the entire world, and with the power of a simple spell from his hands, he can boil an entire building down to its foundation all alone. When he asks Jin if he's interested in joining the Hunters Guild, Jin coldly brushes him off, saying, "Sorry, I'm busy," as Choi turns around and realizes Jin disappeared instantly. This makes Choi want to recruit him even more, thinking that Jin has to be a top tier assassin style hunter, meaning if he had him, his guild would be among the strongest in the world. But as the leader of the White Tiger Guild frustratingly arrives too late, showing evidence that he ran a long way to get here just to meet Jin Woo, Choi starts to wonder just what's going on and how many other people have come across our main character as the S ranks begin to converge on Jin Woo. Before Sung Jin Woo becomes the most well-known S rank hunter in Korea, he takes advantage of the 3 days that the association gave him to actually sneak into a raid that the Hunters Guild is going on, while he considers whether or not he wants to create his own guild. In the world of solo leveling, there's a shop system accessible to everyone online who happens to be a hunter, and that would be the Hunter's Auction Market. On this market, you can find all sorts of items and materials that people have brung back from raids, from different elixirs, weapons, and more. Now, typically the items on here cost a lot. They're so expensive that lower rank hunters can't even afford anything on here, and even higher rank hunters might need a loan from their guild. However, think of it like eBay with direct ties to a hunter's identity. Now, the problem for Jin Woo is honestly he should be able to get really rich very fast by selling some of the items that he gets from his dungeons, but early on in the story he's still listed as an E rank hunter, so even when he has crazy high class items like the Orb of Avarice, he can't really list it since no one would believe that an E rank hunter obtained it. This leads to Jin really investing in getting his S rank license, and is ultimately part of the reason why he joined the Hunter Guild raid on the mining team, since it would give him the credentials that he needs to sell this thing. But thankfully he ends up keeping it and giving it to one of his shadows who makes better use of it than any other hunter would have. To do this, Jin Woo applies to join the raid's mining team because he's technically still an E rank, as during this mission he learns all about how these operations go. Now, we already explained how mining teams work in this series, but as Jin continues to fit in and really makes things way easier for the rest of the team, eventually he ends up spotting the ultimate hunter and his vice captain Cha Hae-in as they enter the dungeon with the rest of their strike squad to clear the way to the boss. At this moment, Jin notices how powerful Cha is and says she might actually be the strongest member of their guild, even comparing her to the chairman himself. While he's scanning her aura, Cha actually seems to notice and looks into the crowd before Jin disappears. However, this won't be the last time these two cross paths here, so next let's explain what happens when Cha catches Jin sneaking around on this strange mission. When Sung Jin Woo secretly sneaks into a raid with the Hunters Guild, he starts to sense the intense mana waves of the boss hiding deep in the dungeon, sensing it's even stronger than Vulcan or Metis the Grim Reaper, who he recently fought in the Demon Castle dungeon. Jin Woo thinks about how impressed he is that Cha and Choi are going to fight against such a crazy boss, but notes that the amount of A-rankers they have with them really makes a difference, since the ones that they have are really quality and reliable from what he can sense. As Jin Woo continues to focus on sensing this boss, he just locks into work, going absolutely hard as the other mining team members notice how fast he's able to break apart the mana crystals in the cave for them. But eventually getting bored of doing this, Jin wanders deeper into the cave, telling himself he just wants to take a peek at the boss, before finally stumbling upon the giant creature lurking around the dungeon and thinking to himself that he knows he'd be able to take it out, but it would collapse the dungeon and end this entire operation that he shouldn't even be a part of. But does that really matter? As Jin materializes his dagger, barely able to keep himself from lunging at this boss, suddenly from behind he hears, "What are you doing over there?" As Cha Hae-in, the strongest female hunter, calls him out, causing him to lie and say he's in the wrong place, but even as he walks away, he leaves an impression on Cha that she'll never forget. But during this whole process, he ends up volunteering the switch from the mining team to the porter team, where he'll be responsible for carrying bags for the A-rank hunters as they enter a new gate that appeared in the area. Now, when Jin enters the dungeon, he has a really strange feeling, because the gate has already been assessed by the guild as not being quite as hard as the one Jin Woo was sure he could have soloed the day before. But Jin says he feels the same sense of unease that he felt when he entered the red gate at the beginning of season 2, and further, the problem is that the leaders of the guild aren't coming on this mission, leaving this gate to the secondary strike team consisting of 11 A ranks and 6 B ranks, but no S rank hunters, meaning if anything near an S rank threat shows itself, it's going to be up to Jin Woo to handle it by himself. However, he's still trying to maintain his cover, so hopefully it doesn't come to that. As Jin and the rest of them enter, they're immediately rushed down by a swarm of C rank jackal monsters, which confuses the team leader since this is an A rank dungeon after all. But as they delve deeper into this mysterious place, they're going to realize that they're all in far more danger than they should be, as they spot a group of high orcs, which are the strongest kind of orcs in dungeons and are typically individually as strong as an A rank hunter. Now, even though Jin's group is filled with A ranks, they're still outnumbered 22 to 17, and when the orcs start to cut through the B ranks that are there, things start to look desperate. In the middle of all this, before Jin Woo decides to step in and help, we see some pretty impressive hunters, like one who's good enough at healing that she even brought back a dude's entire arm, and another girl who seems like she summoned some sort of giant tentacled beast to hold one of these orcs down. Finally, there's a summoner hunter who actually sort of reminds me of Jin Woo's shadow ability, because he's able to summon 2 creatures made of fiery light that he says are on the same rank as A ranks on their own, but he can only control 2 of them and prefers to use just one at any given time. While these guys are starting to lose, Jin Woo goes into his stealth mode and starts to sneak around, injuring all of the high orcs with his daggers and make it easier for the strike squad to take care of them, since he doesn't want to let any of them die. However, as everyone starts to lick their wounds and the battle ends, one of the mages in the group thinks about how Jin must think everyone here is a fool because she could see him helping them. Uh-oh. One of the hunters tells her captain that she saw Orc being ripped apart in midair, and she can't explain how that happened, causing everyone to ask around if maybe someone casted a spell secretly and is hiding it for some reason, causing the girl who noticed Jin Woo earlier to think that he must have a good reason to be hiding his strength, as she holds it down and keeps his secret for now. This whole dungeon and how weird things are going gives them an odd vibe, many of the members of the strike team saying they should back out and go get the leader and vice commander. However, Ki-woon doesn't want to leave because this is his first mission as strike squad leader, and if he's successful, he'll be made the official leader of the group. Eventually, he decides to protect his squad and leads everyone back to the entrance. However, there they find out that the gate has been sealed off by the boss's magic, even hurting the mages who try to dispel this to let them all go free. As they're all completely disabled with cursed magic, suddenly the party is surrounded by over 50 high orcs, and considering they were barely able to defeat 20 of them at max strength, now that the mages are out, this means that they're all doomed. It's at this moment where the boss of the dungeon takes over the mind of one of his orcs and orders all of the humans to come to his chambers, as the mystery of this dungeon continues to unfold, and outside, Cha begins to make her way in to find Sung Jin Woo. As the B-Strike team of the Hunters Guild gets escorted into the boss chamber by 50 A-rank high orcs, the boss speaks on his throne of all sorts of guards and high-powered enemies all around him, telling the humans that he's going to use the rest of the time that the dungeon is up to entertain his other orcs by ending the lives of each of the humans one by one within his chamber, as he uses magic to basically paralyze all of them with visions of their own end, making the other magic users in the room feel like nothing but weaklings compared to this beast. Now, the leader of the orcs, Kargalon, uses his magic and senses Sung Jin Woo in the crowd, saying that one of the beings among them seems to be different somehow. But as the strike team decides to go for an all-or-nothing attack, Kargalon easily stops them using one of his spells, the Hymn of Protection. After doing this, he uses another spell to basically use telekinesis on Ki-woon, the leader of the strike force, slamming him against the ceiling and the ground repeatedly, trying to crack him open like an egg, while everyone else watches on in horror. At this moment, Jin Woo finally steps in, grabbing Ki-woon out of the air and saving him, telling him that he apologizes because he knows the dungeon belongs to the Hunters Guild and he's not one of their members, but asking for permission to and defeat all of the monsters and save them. As Ki Woon swallows his pride and gives Jin permission, and a new battle begins. At that moment, Jin uses his telekinesis ability to grab the enemy and slams one of the orcs against the floor and ceiling repeatedly until it's gone. As he stands up and talks a little trash to the boss of the dungeon, saying this is a bad matchup for the boss, as he summons his shadows all around him, and we see Jin Woo with his 3 generals ready for war. Outside of the boss room, we see Cha Hae-in coming across the bodies of the high orcs that were defeated earlier, questioning just how they were able to beat them. But at the same time, she senses the mana waves coming from deeper into the cave and says if these are coming from the boss, there's no way that anyone from the team will survive, as she puts her hair in a ponytail and powers up, pickaxe in hand, to speed her way towards the boss room. Back in the room, we see the boss Kargalon talking trash back to Jin Woo, saying his little group of soldiers is nothing compared to the army of orcs, as Jin Woo activates a new ability, Monarch's Domain, which expands a domain in the area of darkness, and inside of this domain, the blue energy of his soldiers turns purple as they all get massively boosted and rush in for battle. And the stronger shadows like Iron and Igris easily tear through waves of these monsters. At the same time, Jin Woo flawlessly cuts his way through a bunch of high orcs on his own, causing the members of the strike squad to wonder why the hell such a strong hunter would join their team as a porter, and being amazed at how he can summon so many shadows. Now this may look easy, but Jin Woo says the lower level soldiers are all considered B ranks, so it takes him 3 or 4 lives to beat a single high orc, meaning this is actually draining his mana quite a bit, meaning Jin really has to try to take as many of these things out on his own as he can. But that's when Kargalon, the shaman boss, uses a spell, Hymn of the Fire Dragon, to send out a massive fire blast that wipes out a huge number of Jin Woo's shadow soldiers, all while the boss is still just sitting down on his throne. He hasn't even busted a sweat yet. This makes Jin Woo start to focus his attention on the boss, as Kargalon protects himself with his defensive spell and tells Jin that he's planning on draining his mana by defeating the shadow soldiers over and over again, leaving Jin helpless. And this is exactly what he does, as with one spell, he causes all of Jin's soldiers to explode, but this is when Jin takes a mana potion and says the words arise, bringing back his army along with some of the orcs that they were fighting against and bringing him closer to a numbers advantage. The boss of the dungeon, Kargalon, freaks out, wondering if Jin Woo is a monarch, one of the legendary beings in this universe. It's at this point where he gets up from his chair and joins the battle along with his generals, who go head to head with Jin Woo's generals, Igris and Iron. Iron easily knocks over his opponent and bashes it wide open with his massive hammer, but Igris, always being a show-off, does a cool sword move as he easily cuts through one and clashes with another before sending it flying into a 3-part combo move between Iron, Igris, and Tank, the Bear, wiping the rest of Kargalon's generals out pretty easily. But there's a problem. Suddenly the boss starts to use magic on the rest of the strike team, cursing them, blinding them, and burning them from the inside so they don't interfere in the battle. The issue is that Kargalon was trying to hit Jin Woo with all of these spells as well, but Jin's immunity buff activates since he's immune to all conditions, and this really makes the boss start to fear Jin Woo, as he realizes that none of his debuff spells are gonna work here. From that moment on, Jin Woo starts laughing, brushing his shoulders off, saying, "I'm a bad match for you," as one of his wizards holding the Orb of Avarice casts a massive fireball, breaking through the boss's shield spell, and things are starting to look really bad for this shaman. Cha Hae-in from the Hunters Guild and even Agent Chul have made it into the dungeon, as they both watch our main character fighting against the boss, and realizing that his dagger isn't doing anything to the massive opponent, causing him to just start throwing hands, mashing the shit out of Kargalon. On his knees at this point, the boss looks up at Jin Woo with the arisen versions of Kargalon's guards standing at his side, as Jin says, "The moment you lost these guys, it was all over for you," allowing Kargalon's own guards to execute him right before Jin Woo. At this point, since the dungeon is completed, all sorts of drops appear from Jin Woo's gamer system, but he decides to not take them because his dungeon doesn't belong to him, as instead he proceeds to say, "Arise," one more time, reviving most of the high orcs and adding them to his army, while also raising Kargalon, the boss, in one try. Nice. Jin says he forgot what his name was, so he names him Tusk, and realizes that this boss is at a higher rank than all his other ones, since Tusk is an elite knight, and before that his strongest soldier was just a knight, letting him know that there's even more room for his shadows to evolve. At this point, Woo Jin Chul tells everyone that this is now a top secret matter, and they can't talk about what they saw here until given permission, as they all thank Jin Woo for his efforts, but there's about to be so many questions about what they just saw. News gets back to the guild leader, the ultimate hunter Choi Jong-in, who yells at his assistant that says he has no idea why Jin was there in the first place, but explains that he likely only stepped in and got involved when things got out of control. Choi is really annoyed by this, but he questions his assistant, saying, "Between me and Jin Woo, who would you say is stronger?" At this point, his assistant gives a long, drawn-out answer, but ultimately it ends in a question. Can you solo an A-rank dungeon of the highest difficulty all by yourself, like alone? Like, can you handle attack, defense, and support? Choi is shocked, realizing in his heart that he probably could do pretty well for a while, but the second he's surrounded and attacked by a large group, he'd be cooked. At this point, he looks down sadly, saying that his title as the Ultimate Hunter is basically just a joke now because someone has appeared even more amazing than he is, because Jin Woo seems like he can more or less do everything. And it's at this point where it's decided. Choi decides that with all of his effort, he's gonna recruit Jin Woo to the Hunters Guild and cement their spot as the most powerful guild in history, but I don't think that's gonna go well because that boy is a leader, not a follower. Solo Leveling has its own Isaac Netero, and this comes in the form of Chairman Go Gun Hee, who wants to meet Sung Jin Woo after he becomes the 10th S-rank hunter in Korea. We learned this when Jin Woo was watching over his mom's bed in the hospital, and the leader of the hunter surveillance team, pretty much the CIA for hunters, approaches him telling Jin that they're the ones who manage hunters and keep society stable, however they're pretty much useless against S-ranks, so it's time for Jin to answer to someone higher than Woo. At that point, we see the chairman of the Hunters Association walk down the hallway and introduce himself to Jin, instantly gaining his respect when Jin senses that despite being over 80 years old, this guy is definitely an S-rank hunter. Go Gun Hee congratulates Jin on his new status, offering him a job at the Hunters Association and telling him despite the fact that they can't give him tons of money, there's other opportunities there for him that he shouldn't miss out on if he happens to love his country. The problem is that Jin Woo can sense there's another reason he's getting this offer, and it all has to do with the power balance between the 5 guilds of Korea. This is probably one of the most embarrassing moments in Solo Leveling, and it happens when after Jin Woo completes his re-hunter exam and has to wait 3 days before his rank is officially revealed. On that day, a popular star known as Lee Min-sung is set to get his ranking by putting his hand on the big mana reader machine. With this being pretty big news in Korea, as outside of the building a massive crowd of paparazzi and interviews forms, questioning anyone who arrives on whether or not they'll recruit Lee Min-sung or what rank they think he's going to get. Now we learned that before even taking his evaluation, he's already signed a contract with the Fiend Guild, but as he's about to enter the building, he hears a security guard trying to keep Sung Jin Woo from entering the building, saying it's blocked off right now, as suddenly the chairman of the entire Hunter Association comes out saying actually he's my guest, causing a commotion as the reporters start to wonder who is so important that Go Gun Hee is escorting them himself, while Lee Min-sung starts to get really angry at losing the spotlight. This gets even worse when Jin Woo leaves the building after officially being named the 10th S-rank hunter in Korea, because now all of the cameras are on him and they go crazy as it even gets coverage on live news, making Jin Woo a new enemy for life as now he's the star. The final step in becoming an official S-rank hunter for Sung Jin Woo is revealing his powers to the chairman and the other S-ranks who are present, and as he does, he reveals that he can summon hundreds of shadow soldiers, which really freaks out everyone in the room, especially the White Tiger Guild leader who just can't understand how Jin has gotten so much more powerful since the last time he saw him. Now from this point on, with his strength certified, Jin Woo was placed into the mage class, and the hunter website updates to include a minute, sending the entirety of Korea into a frenzy. We see a number of characters who know Jin that we've seen so far in the series react to this news, but eventually we see Yoo Jin Ho with his father, who sees the news and finally decides to give Yoo Jin the power to take over the family guild and lead it however he wants. But this backfires when Yoo Jin says that Sung Jin Woo wants to start a guild of his own, and Yoo Jin is actually going to join Sung Jin Woo, thanking his father for the offer. Finally, as Jin Woo gets surrounded by cameras and they start asking about when and how he reawakened, the other S-ranks offer to take Jin Woo home since the cameras are so much to deal with. However, he just vanishes, saying he's fine, making Bake from the White Tiger Guild freak out even more as he starts to realize that Jin Woo was potentially a hunter who can get stronger and stronger by leveling up.